Hey, it's Soul with another video, and up here are the sponsors that help me bring you more videos like this and all things Warcraft. If you're interested in helping out, check out my Patreon page in a link below. World of Warcraft Shadowlands was announced just the other week, and as the dust settles, the excitement for WoW's next expansion into the unknown hasn't really waned yet. People seem to be pretty excited for the flavor customization that comes with Covenants, the replay value of Torghast, and perhaps most importantly, the unpruning of many abilities. This means long-lost abilities will make a return, and many spec-specific abilities will be relaxed and made available for every specialization. I'm both happy, but I'm also left wanting by this change. I mean, it's great that class design is going in what I think is in the right direction, but what's left of my eyebrows has me furrowed. As in, maybe the WoW team is being a little bit too timid about just going all the way with a big class revamp like a lot of us have been asking for. So what are we doing here today? Why did you accidentally click this video? I'm going to present a few ideas that could have happened in the Shadowlands expansion with WoW's class design. Maybe this is the disruptive change that you're craving. Or maybe it's a horror show, but the fact of the matter is, what I'm going to propose today is totally made up. It's fan fiction, just a couple of ideas to get the ball rolling or to get you thinking about what is possible. So let's not take this too seriously, folks. Let's just have fun, and maybe you might like what I have to say. So, well, strap in. Let's get started. Here's what the WoW team is doing with classes in Shadowlands. They're blurring the lines that separate specializations because in today's WoW, the different specializations within a single class are so clearly divided, they might as well be different classes.
So we started doing some things. We said, okay, this spec is going to be about poisons, this spec is going to be about pirates, and this spec is going to be about the shadows and the stealth. And, you know, to some degree, we kind of got lost a little bit on what being a class meant and what being a spec meant. We really pushed things away. We actually pushed a lot of the specs further away from being a member of their class than we ever had before.
As a paladin, and keep in mind that I'll be using the paladin's perspective throughout this video, once upon a time there were a lot more abilities than there are now that I could use regardless of my specialization. Auras are a good example of where modern class design celebrated specialization more than class. As a tank, I only have access to Retribution Aura, but when healing, I have 3 auras to choose from: Devotion, Mercy, and Sacrifice. Meanwhile, Retribution has no auras, and personally I would love to give Retribution the aura of its namesake. Even abilities like Consecration are built into the Holy and Protection spec, but for Retribution, it's a talent selection. And this inconsistency is the thing across all the classes and specs at varying levels. So let's talk about specializations. Modern specializations, or specs, in WoW began during the Cataclysm, and it cemented itself in Mists of Pandaria. Today we choose a specialization as soon as level 10, for example Protection, and as we level, we learn mostly protection-related things. A selection of class-wide abilities are also learned, but once our spec is chosen, we are decidedly that spec until we change it into something else. And then all our buttons change.
And then you play from 1 to 10, and you're that disciplined priest, and you hit 10, and you're like, well, now I want to be Shadow. So you select Shadow, and like, half your buttons fly away, all these new buttons appear, a lot of things change, and it's not even like you change specs and you got additional things. It's actually like you just change classes completely.
Back in the ancient days of WoW, or today's WoW Classic, your specialization wasn't so easily defined. In fact, your spec was considered to be the tree that you invested the most talent points into, and there was quite a bit of freedom in how you could progress. In those days, the class did come first, and your talent selection simply made you better at one thing over another. In that kind of system, you grew into your spec gradually with each talent point until you ran out of points at max level. In modern WoW, your specialization made you a tank, or a healer, or a DPS of some sort. That alone compromises the sense of individual identity in WoW. Now don't get me wrong, there are a lot of players who just choose the talent build that their favorite website or content creator tells them to. But the point is that specializations have become detrimental to the identity of our class. So that's why I'm here with this idea. Let's change that. Specializations, screw it, specializations are gone. Poof, see ya. We're going back to class over spec identity, and the rigid form of choosing a specialization prevents that from happening. As for talent rows, well, they were a part of specialization too, so bye-bye. Right now, specializations determine our choices. Instead, we're going to flip this around and make our choices determine our specialization. But we're not going back to vanilla's old talent system, because something like this, while it worked out well enough in the first few years of WoW, it can be a bit much if you want to bring back years worth of removed abilities. It's not that this won't work at all, but I do think there's a better way.
You start off clean slate at level 1. Every level you earn, you're a little bit stronger. You start earning abilities in different spell ranks every other level. You get talent points past 10. You build out this tree. It's a great experience. Character gets more powerful. We love it. And that worked out really well to expand on that system through Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm. And then Mists of Pandaria, we were starting to see some issues. We were getting feedback that my action bars are full. Please, please. Spellbooks were confusing. And also, we were power creeping a lot of gameplay to dangerous places.
There are some really cool abilities and talents that we've learned over the years, and I would love to bring back as many of them as possible. So let's get right into how classes are going to develop in the World of Warcraft after this fictional revamp. WoW is moving towards a level 1 through 60 experience. Thanks to the level squish coming in Shadowlands, you'll be expected to get something with every level. So we're going to follow that formula. In this new vision of class design, while leveling, you'll be learning a massive amount of abilities and passives. That's because my vision of class design is going to be a horizontal system of making choices between abilities to define your playstyle, whether it's a tank, a healer, a DPS, or some crazy hybrid that might be only useful in one situation but you're determined to make it work anyway. Absolutely nothing that you just saw or heard makes any sense, so don't worry, I'm going to give you an example. Here's a chart that shows you what abilities a paladin is going to learn from levels 1 through 9. Of course, we get to the basics first. At level 1, all you have is Crusader Strike and the clothes on your back, but you learn a bunch of core abilities to get you learning the ropes. At level 10, you hit what is called a Milestone. In this concept, a milestone is where you're given a series of choices that help define your class specialization. In this case, a paladin will choose between the following spec abilities: Holy Shock, Avenger Shield, and Templar's Verdict, which are very core to the Holy, Protection, and Retribution trees respectively. When you choose one of these abilities, you also gain a few passive bonuses that make your class more capable of certain roles. In this case, if you choose Avenger Shield, you can no longer be critically hit. Choose Holy Shock, and your mana pool gets bigger. Choose Templar's Verdict, and you gain additional holy power resource. So that's sort of the trick here. You're not exactly speccing to be a tank, a healer, or a DPS, but you are given the minimum but obvious passives that make you capable of said role. You're still going to learn abilities that are usable regardless of the role you ultimately choose. Abilities like Righteous Fury and Hand of Reckoning. So no matter what choice you make, you can tank if you want to, or heal, or DPS in a pinch. What you excel at will depend on the choice that you make here.
Classes are made up of elements of each and different spec, and then a spec doubles down on it. All paladins can embrace the light to help their friends. All paladins protect their allies, and all paladins execute their enemies with divine judgment. But when you pick a spec, you really do that in a particular way.
As you continue leveling, you'll learn more abilities, all of which you can use no matter which milestone you choose. Some abilities are new buttons to press, like your Blessings or your Divine Steed, which are core to a paladin's kit. But some abilities become alternative choices for old abilities. So let's take Crusader Strike for example. You learn this ability at level 1, but at a certain level, you gain Hammer of the Righteous, and at another point, you learn Blessed Hammer. No, you're not going to use all 3 of these abilities in some crazy rotation. Instead, you just choose which ability you want to use. Maybe one ability has better single target damage. Maybe swinging around hammers is just cool to you. In this case, swapping your abilities can be done in a rested area or by using a tome. Swapping milestones, though, can be switched as if you were changing specs. So why are we doing this? Well, when unpruning a bunch of abilities, talents, and passives, you find out there are a ton of them, and you can't hope to have all of them available at once. Originally, that's why the talent tree and talent row system existed. It was to provide these choices. But neither of these systems as they are right now can hold on to all of these legacy abilities. We'd either have overcomplicated trees with ridiculous paths and filler talents that you would feel compelled to take even though you don't really care for them. The talent rows would actually work a little bit better in this situation, but instead of a static series of rows and columns, we're simply going to take certain abilities and group them together into different choices that you can make. Some of you paladins may recall from Mists of Pandaria the choice between the Light's Hammer, Execution Sentence, and Holy Prism as talents. What we're going to get here is a system similar to this, where as you level, you learn one ability, then another, then another. You get these 3 cool abilities, but ultimately you can only choose one. Notice that the growth is horizontal and not vertical like the talent row system is. This means that you'll be making the same number of choices between your abilities, but the variety of choices grows. In today's WoW, the history of our character feels like it's being written and rewritten all the time as we gain and lose abilities. What I'm trying to propose here is that, I guess, throughout our adventures on Azeroth, we've learned and taught ourselves all these amazing things along the way. Some of us have learned to harness the power of the Ashbringer, and so that gives us the Wake of Ashes ability, while others might have mastered the use of the Seals of Command or the Seals of Truth. But in a story context, we mastered one or we mastered the other, but we couldn't master both. Anyway, going back to learning stuff, at some point you're going to hit a second milestone. And once again, you can choose between one of several spec-specific abilities. And this is where things can get pretty crazy. For a pure class, like a hunter or a warlock, well, this is where you can tailor your class to have a very unique combination of abilities. You can be a close-range melee hunter with very powerful pet abilities, or you can be a warlock who can command multiple imps while throwing chaos bolts. With hybrid classes, it gets even more bonkers because your first and second milestones might be of different roles altogether. By choosing a second milestone ability that's a different role from your first milestone, you can become a true hybrid class. So for example, at level 10, my paladin opted to learn Avenger Shield, and with that I got some additional defensive capabilities. But let's say when I hit my second milestone, I can choose between the following: Shield of the Righteous, Divine Storm, and Beacon of Light. I decided to not pick up Shield of the Righteous, which sounds totally insane, because that's my active mitigation ability. Instead, I decided to pick up Divine Storm because I'm an idiot. Or maybe it's because I know that I'm going into a raid encounter that has lots of adds and magic damage that would bypass my active mitigation anyway. Maybe I can switch to Holy Shock and Shield of the Righteous for some extra single target damage or off healing. Or maybe I can choose Templar's Verdict and Shield of the Righteous and be laughed out of my group. But there are also a lot of passive talents that could be unpruned that unfortunately aren't as fun or interesting, but nonetheless it would help fill gaps that would define our characters further. Taking a page from Diablo 3's talent system, a simple selection among a growing pool of available talents would work really well here. As expansion features come and go, maybe they can be thrown here if they don't fit well as an ability choice. So let's summarize this new version of character progression in WoW. A lot of old abilities will be unpruned and be available regardless of your spec. Both the specializations and talent UI are being gutted. In its place is a progression system where you earn and swap out different abilities a la carte. Milestones will be what replaces specializations, which give spec-defining abilities and passives that allow for a lot of customization. Meanwhile, less powerful but meaningful passives can be selectable on a separate UI. To wrap this up, I'll address just a couple of concerns aside from admitting that this is a very bare bones idea and it requires a lot of iteration. I think that goes without saying. One is, what will this do to the PvP talents? This can also be folded into the new system. You can just select what abilities you want to use that are most useful in PvP situations. I mean, imagine being like a ret paladin with Templar's Verdict and you also have Beacon of Light. I'm sure that'll be like a whole lot of fun to fight against them. Sarcasm. Also, to make it clear, as expansions roll out, abilities that were born out of the most previous expansion, like the ones from expansion features, can simply be absorbed into the system. That's the beauty of moving towards a more horizontal system. The number of choices are static, so button bloat is always going to be under control, and it's easy enough to take an expansion feature and just kind of slide it onto this ability table. The biggest concern, of course, is going to be balance. How do you balance this? And it won't surprise me one bit to see comments addressing balance before you even get to this part of the video. There's no doubt in my mind that after unpruning like hundreds of abilities and passives, and then making them into choices available to all of our classes, it's going to be next to impossible to make every one of them viable and worthy of a mythic parse. To that I have two things to say. One is that saying it's too hard to balance, it's a really crappy excuse to say no to an idea. Two, and this is directed toward the WoW team, you gotta stop obsessing so much over balance. And I guess this is me talking to you fans as well. It's funny to see conversations where players call for better balance, but at the same time they're also super obsessed with simming for what's the best in slot and moving towards that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if there are only 2 talents or like 1,000 of them, because one group of players is always going to choose the thing that's most effective, even though it's not as fun. Meanwhile, another group is always going to choose whatever they feel is fun, even if it isn't like the thing that will get them on Warcraft logs. So if I wanted to pick up Templar's Verdict and Shield of the Righteous as my 2 milestones like I mentioned earlier, I'd be an idiot because, in case you don't know, Templar's Verdict requires a 2-handed weapon and Shield of the Righteous requires a shield. But if I wanted to use like weapon swapping macros and try to make it work anyway, you should let me just give it a shot. So that's going to wrap it up, and maybe after listening to all of this, you can understand why it is that Blizzard might have opted to go the safer route and just do the unpruning and not have an entire class design revolution.
But we, have to gauge how disruptive we want to be, because when you're going in the Shadowlands and you just loaded up on launch day and you're going with your friends, we want you going into the Shadowlands. We don't want you to be like, I don't remember how to ride this bicycle. We want you to get in there and get in the game right away. So we want to fix problems, but we really want to make sure that the things we're doing are worth the disruption to the players, because someone is playing that spec and is probably pretty happy right now. So we only want to hit home runs as much as we possible. And we want to say, is this more fun for the player, or are we doing it just to fix kind of a problem that bothers us as designers? So I don't think you'll see as extensive class changes as we saw in Legion, but we're going to be mostly additive.
I hope this was fun, or at least illuminating. I mean, I had fun, so I guess that's very important. But leave a comment and let me know what you think of these ideas, or what you would rather see Blizzard do instead. Also, like the video if you enjoyed yourself, and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.